at the Arc, located on Mississippi Avenue. We also run the Skyland Workforce Center and a network of 7 urban farms. And our largest project to date is the project that brings us all here tonight, the 11th Street Bridge Park. I'm going to go through the agenda and we've got a lot of great speakers that will be sharing an update tonight. And then we're going to make sure that we leave enough time for questions. If we don't get to all of the questions, any questions that are put into the question chat box, we will be answering and posting to our website, so never fear. But the agenda for tonight, Jessica, our Senior Communications and Community Engagement Manager, was the person welcoming you in. I'm going to be giving a quick overview about the 11th Street Bridge Park. Some of you might already be familiar with this, but for some of you that are new, it's helpful to provide a little context. Jim from WRA is going to give an update on our project status and a little bit about the engineering of how do you design an occupiable space over the Anacostia River. And then we're going to hear from our design team from OMA and Olin, Jason and Hallie. We'll be sharing some of our latest designs. I'm a little biased, but they are beautiful. They're really stunning. They really give you an idea of what it's like to walk across that bridge and experience it. And then our Director of Equity for Building Bridges Across the River, Vaughn Perry, will be talking about the investments we're making, not only in the bricks and mortar of the park, but the investments in the neighborhoods, the residents, the communities on either side of the river through our equitable development strategies to make sure that the thousands, tens of thousands of residents who've helped shape this park from the beginning can be the ones that benefit from it. And then our wonderful friends at the Anacostia Watershed Society, Ariel, we'll be doing a deeper dive into some of the programming around the Environmental Education Center, which will be a key part of the park as it anchors the east side of the river, and start a larger conversation about what kind of programming will be there and soliciting everyone's feedback. And then we are going to open it up for questions, the comments, and to hear from you. So let me start with a quick background on the park itself. So I think most of you know, but the 11th Street Bridge Park is connecting the communities of east of the river of Anacostia and Fairlawn and west of the river of Capitol Hill and Navy Yard by Barracks Row. This has been a connector for centuries. The earliest images that I've seen is the 1700s from the old Navy Yard Bridge. And I think one of the goals that most viscerally connects with residents is, the river has been a dividing line for generations. So how do we create a physical and metaphorical bridge connecting two sides of the river? So we can go to the next slide. And in our case, we had this really once in a lifetime opportunity where the old bridges that were built in the 1960s reached the end of their lifespan and needed to be replaced. And instead of getting rid of all the old infrastructure, we saved part of that old infrastructure, specifically the piers and the pilings that are underneath, to then create this new bridge park and build a new deck that's on top, but one that no longer has to hold cars or tractor trailers, but that can hold community generated programming spaces. So the bridge park will be about the size of 3 football fields stacked end to end to end. When you combine both sides of the approaches on the Navy Yard and the Anacostia side, it's about 7 acres to give you a sense of scale. Next slide. So you can see the 11th Street Bridge Park will be adjacent to the 11th Street local bridge that opened in 2013. The 2 freeway bridges are a little further away. All 3 of those bridges opened up in 2013. And the bridge park will be adjacent to the bridge that lands right there at the corner of Good Hope and MLK, the epicenter of historic Anacostia. And you're going to be hearing about it tonight, but at multiple places, we're going to be connecting to the existing 16-foot wide pedestrian and bike path that has already done a great job of connecting both sides of the river. Next. So from the beginning, these have been our 4 goals from the project, and I've been on the project from the beginning since 2011. This has been about a 10-year journey. And these are the 4 table legs that the entire project stands on. One is improving public health. The ensuring that we're creating both a safe place to play and access to fresh fruits and vegetables through some of our urban agriculture gardens. 2 is engaging with the river itself, and you're going to be hearing a lot more about this from Ariel at our friends at the Anacostia Watershed Society. The river is an amazing natural resource that for too long has been hiding in plain sight, but to really get people to inspire that next generation of river stewards, we need to bring them down to the river and experience its flora and fauna. As I mentioned earlier, the goal that most connects, I think, with district residents is bringing together people that otherwise wouldn't normally cross paths, the rubbing elbows with folks in these green spaces. And finally, and you're going to be hearing about this in a deeper dive from Vaughn Perry, making sure this is not just an anchor for economic development, but an anchor for equitable and inclusive growth. Next slide. So when this journey began in 2011, about a decade ago, before we actually engaged any of the architects or engineers you're going to hear from tonight, we spent 2 years just going out and talking to the community, primarily talking to residents east and west of the river in Ward 6 and Ward 8, and not with the beautiful pictures that you're going to see tonight, but with an idea of what do you think? What do you think about repurposing this old bridge, the old spans of the bridge for a new park? And in those first 2 years, we had over 200 meetings with the community, with faith leaders, with business owners, ANCs, Anacostia Coordinating Council, Fair Lawn Citizen Associations, you name it. And we heard a lot of enthusiasm for the park, some skepticism, to be sure. This is a big sort of audacious idea. But then we said, all right, well then help us shape it. Help us make sure that every single programming element that is built into the park comes from the local community. So we go to the next slide, Jim. We kept hearing these same ideas again and again from residents on both sides of the river, ideas for an environmental education center, access to the river, particularly from the Ward 8 side, east of the river, urban agriculture, particularly for a community that has one grocery store serving 75,000 residents. It's a huge health justice issue. Public art that amplifies the voices of local residents and the really rich history on both sides of the river. Performance space was the #1 programming idea that we heard in these community meetings. A intergenerational play space and a cafe or restaurant, place to grab a cup of coffee, grab a bite to eat. So we took to these ideas in 2014 and we launched a larger nationwide design competition. We had 81 firms from around the nation, around the globe, actually, some of the best architects and landscape architects in the country apply. And what was really critical is during the design competition, we had a group of local community stakeholders called our Design Oversight Committee. This is about 36 residents and stakeholders. And their job was to review the design brief before a single design team saw it. This was the Bible of our design competition. Meet with the 4 final design teams again and again during the design process. And then after about an 8-month competition, they used the same criteria as our jury to select the design team. And the design that they selected is by OMA & Olin that you'll be hearing tonight. And we have made fantastic progress over the last several years and getting really close to beginning to be at 100% design and soliciting our general contractor, but I'm getting ahead of myself. And with that, it's a perfect segue to pass it over to Jim to talk about the overall team and our project to date and all of the engineering. Jim, take it away.
Thank you, Scott. Welcome, everyone. So as Scott has mentioned, Whitman was brought on to work with OMA and Olin as the project management to kind of work through making sure that the structure and the feasibility of this concept could come to fruition. We have a large team, and we wanted to highlight some of them this night with regards to not only with WRA and OMA and Olin, but also with Delon Hampton providing structural engineering and civil engineering, as well as some survey being done by VICA, lighting being done by MCLA here in the district, as well as Hillis Carnes and SETI providing specific services with regards to geotechnical and MEP, and Precision Systems providing traffic support for the project. So where are we in the project timeline? Well, right now, as Scott has alluded to, we've gone through the design competition. We did a lot of feasibility and concept design studies in 2015 through 2020, and really working through that concept and 30% plans. And right now, we are working through final design and working to get to solicit for construction at the end of 2022. Some of the big things that have been happening throughout that process and schedule has really been working to make sure that all of the agencies are on board, that we are working through all of the permittings that's necessary. One of the big pieces of the puzzle was making sure that we have NCPC and NPS on board for an improved transfer jurisdiction. Both the existing old 11th Street bridge was on a narrow corridor through that area. And as you've seen throughout the various development of this project, this bridge widens out from the Navy Yard side to the Anacostia side, as well as has a significant place and space on the Anacostia side as we work to integrate it into the community. All of that needed to be worked out with a need with the district with regards to providing the needed space for the project. Right now, we're working through that final design and working to finalize the design and advertise hopefully by the end of 2022. So the proposed bridge park, as envisioned by OMA and Olin, was really a means of place and being able to take everything that had been done from the community and understand the programming, making sure that we all as a team understood that we needed to embrace that program and embrace the 4 pillars that were based upon where all the information and input had come from the community. So we took that understanding and realized that we needed to take that and now make it a functional structure, as well as make sure we didn't lose sight of the initial vision of the project. That began with understanding what that project meant from a structure standpoint. As Scott alluded to, we were tasked with basically making sure we were utilizing the existing structure and the existing footprint that was there. But this structure is much larger than the existing structure that was there. It also is holding a lot more load. When everyone hears that we're dealing with a highway bridge, they're thinking, okay, we're putting a park. Well, the park has soil. The park has a lot more requirements than a highway bridge would be from a standpoint of making sure everybody feels comfortable on the bridge and that the space is there. So the concept was to make sure we were looking at that trussing to be able to support that structure, as well as the support on the foundations themselves. The structure is about 1,000 feet long, and it's about 30 feet wide on the Navy Yard side and about 120 feet wide on the Anacostia side. So we began with a structural model, making sure that we're taking that structural model of the concept, looking at how that would be framed. This is a picture out of our structural model that's looking at all of the various elements, all of the steel framing elements that are going to be encompassing the bridge, and how we would then take those loads as we worked with OMA and Olin on the programming to be able to transfer that to the foundation. This is a model of the existing foundation that you can see here with the piles there. And then you see a larger concrete cap that's sitting there that has additional piles that you see here that are longer in those areas. One of the big things that we needed to do is make sure that the existing foundations were brought up to current code. And we are over the Anacostia River. So one of the things that we need to do there is for resiliency is making sure that we're dealing with scour and the differences in flood elevations that were coming through there. So in order to do that, we did have to do additional piling, as well as making sure that we were accommodating the additional growth in width as we go from one side of the river to the other. Then in section, as we worked with Hallie and her team, as well as Jason, and trying to understand where all the programming were, we had to also understand how we were going to get that landscaping onto the structure. This is a couple of cross sections that just show how we were working to integrate tree pits in order to get trees onto the bridge and with the framing, as well as understanding as we go across the bridge, the needs for the different soil depths as we go across in order to make healthy plantings and an enjoyable landscape across the entire structure. With that, I'll turn it over to Jason to talk about the accessibility.
Thanks so much, Jim. I'm Jason Long with OMA, the architects of the Bridge Park, working together with Olin, as you heard already, as the landscape architects. And I'll start by talking a bit about accessibility and how you'll get to the Bridge Park. So obviously, you'll be able to access the park from the Anacostia River Trail on both sides of the river, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But coming from further afield, there are 3 metro stops that are within maximum 20-minute walk. The Potomac Avenue Metro Station, the Navy Yard Metro Station, and of course the Anacostia Metro Station. There are also a number of parking opportunities for people coming by car. So the Maritime Plaza parking on the west side of the river, the 1338 Good Hope Road parking lot, and then the Anacostia Metro Station parking as well. So people coming by car will also have a place to park and come down to the river for either daily visits or even also events. And then, of course, you'll be able to walk along Good Hope Road and then also along the 11th Street coming from the west side. Next. So here you see a more zoomed in plan looking at pedestrian access closer into the bridge. So starting on the west side of the river on the Navy Yard side, as I mentioned, you'll have access from the Navy Yard Walk or the Anacostia River Trail on this side. Coming up, kind of moving to the west, you'll have an opportunity to either take a stair from kind of midway along where the Navy Yard wall sits, or going back over. There's also an accessible path up onto the bridge as well, of course. And then coming from the east side, one of the areas that we've been developing the most, and both I and Hallie will talk about this, is the area where the bridge is meeting the east side of the river and Anacostia Park, where we tried to both adjust the programming and the way that the park itself is situated so that we're really making a robust and inviting entry point from along the Anacostia River Trail on the east side, but also from Good Hope Road. So as you come along from Good Hope Road, there are a number of accessible paths up onto the bridge, as well as stair shortcuts that take you up. And there are also direct routes up from the Anacostia River Trail itself. And these all lead you up onto the Bridge Park. We're also conscious of making connections between the 11th Street local bridge on the north side of the Bridge Park over to the bridge itself. So both accessible paths with short ramps and then other areas where there'll be just a few steps. And I'll show that in more detail in a second. So next. We're also hoping that people come by bike to the Bridge Park. As Scott mentioned, there's a 16-foot wide shared bike and pedestrian path on the existing 11th Street local bridge. We're hoping that'll still be a kind of primary bike commuter path, and we'll create places where you can get your bike, come there with your bike along that path and then get onto the bridge. That's the 2 little blue arrows that you see here on the north side of the bridge. But there'll also be ways to come up closer onto the bridge with your bike on shared bike and pedestrian routes that will link up to the existing 11th Street local bridge, but also to Good Hope Road and also to the 11th Street to the west, where there are also other adjustments to the bike path there that will, I think, improve bike access coming from the west as well. Next. And then here you see a kind of quick diagram of the ways you can get from the 11th Street local bridge onto the Bridge Park. So starting from the west, there's where you see a little person figure. That means you can get there, but it requires a couple of steps. And then the accessibility icon indicates a place where there's a short ramp or at grade kind of aligned connection so that you can pass with a wheelchair. So there are accessible paths on both sides of the bridge, as well as directly adjacent to the cafe. And then these nearby also places that require just a couple of steps. Next. And then here, just to illustrate that a little bit more clearly, you're looking here south, basically across the 11th Street local bridge to the Bridge Park, and then of course to the Anacostia River and Anacostia Park beyond. So on the west side of the bridge, which is here now on the far right side of the page, you can walk up a couple little steps to get from the path up onto the Bridge Park. Then there's an accessible route kind of just at the area that we call the Rain Gardens. And then moving further along underneath the kind of initial overlook area, the so-called Capitol overlook and the access paths to it, There's another access point that has just a couple of steps that lead you up into the Hammock Grove and rain garden and picnic garden. Then beyond that, you have the Central Plaza and the cafe. And at the cafe, there's an additional accessible path that takes you up, that connects the two bridges. And then beyond that, an additional pedestrian connection, as well as another accessible connection just beyond. Next. So as we've been refining the Bridge Park, we've made a few adjustments since we last presented the project to the public. Some of those have to do with programmatic kind of rethinking, and some of them have to do with some changes that we've made to try to make the bridge as efficient as possible and work within the budgets that we have available. So one of the biggest programmatic changes is that we've moved or relocated the performance space that was previously located on the bridge itself onto so-called terra firma within the connection point to the Anacostia Park. So it's the oval now that you see on the right side of the screen here in this plan. That's now a lawn with a set of steps that will be able to house more people. So 250 people on the steps and even more potentially on the lawn, on an amphitheater that will be more flexible, more easily accessed, and also with a great view downriver. And that's also freed up some space on the park for other functions within the Hammock Grove and the picnic gardens. The whole bridge we've made a little bit thinner, so we've reduced it by 15 feet all along in order to make the access from the west side into the Navy Yard path a little bit more efficient, but also just to make the whole structure more efficient. We've done that consistently across so that the bridge is still tapering from its thinnest point on the west side, where it's now 30 feet wide, to its widest point on the east side, where it meets Anacostia Park, where it's now 127 feet wide. And we checked carefully to make sure that we could maintain the functionality of the Environmental Education Center, which remains the same as it was before, actually, and also the cafe, which is slightly reduced, but still has a robust kitchen, seating area, and community room. And also the other paths that extend across the bridge are all ample, often 15 feet wide, to both accommodate pedestrians and kind of emergency vehicles when they're needed. Next. So I'll show you here the kind of two plans. There's two levels effectively to the Bridge Park. The upper level, where you have the two lookouts, the Capitol Lookout on the west side and the Anacostia Lookout on the east side. So that's the two kind of wings, upper wings of the X shape of the bridge. And that's what you're looking at here. So you see here the Anacostia Lookout, the so-called Great Lawn. And this is an area that we've also developed and tried to simplify so that it can be more flexible. And then you see the Central Plaza, that is the focal point of the whole Bridge Park, where the kind of the midpoint of the X. And then on the west side, the Capitol Lookout. Next. And then here, the lower level of the bridge, where you see on the east side, an urban agriculture area, the amphitheater that I just mentioned, now located on terra firma looking out over the river, the Kayak Launch, and then the Bridge Park offices and Environmental Education Center, which is the kind of white rectangle that's marked Bridge Park offices here. It's two levels, the Environmental Education Center, where on the upper level, there are offices for the Bridge Park, a ranger station, and restrooms. And then on the lower level, classroom spaces for the Environmental Education Center, and that spills out onto an outdoor classroom. Just beyond that to the west is the play area. So a large play area with kind of interactive play equipment and places for seating as well. Then the Community Porch, which is a shaded, flexible space, the cafe and community room, and the Central Plaza, the picnic garden just to the west, and the hammock area, and then finally the rain gardens that are really the entry point from the west onto the Bridge Park. Next. And then here, another view, we're kind of giving you a little bit more of a three-dimensional overlook of the programming. And I'll just quickly mention everything running across again from east to west. So the amphitheater, again, this oval that you see on the bottom right, which has a set of steps that you can make out now in this three-dimensional view looking back to the river, the urban agricultural area, then the Environmental Education Center, the play area, the Anacostia Lookout, which actually hovers over the Community Porch, providing shade for it, the Great Lawn up above, and then below the cafe, the Central Plaza, And then just to the west, the picnic garden and the Hammock Grove, which are on the lower level of the bridge. And then above, the pathway that takes you up to the Capitol Lookout, and then beyond the rain gardens and the entrance from the Navy Yard. Next. So here you see then now finally a kind of realistic view of the bridge park in place, where you can see again this new entry point and really richly programmed entry point coming from Good Hope Road onto the bridge park, where there are a series of pathways that lead you up both from the Anacostia River Trail, but also from Good Hope Road itself, with the all kind of spiraling around the amphitheater, and then the EEC, the play area, and the other areas across the bridge leading to the west. Next. Here you're now placed just adjacent to the amphitheater, having just come off Good Hope Road, looking to the north at the bridge park through these the trees here and the river, of course, beyond. As I mentioned, the amphitheater will now have space for 215 people in these step seats, but also more people in the lawn. And we think this will be a great place, both when there are events, but also when there's no event and people just can come here, have a picnic and sit and enjoy the river. Next. Here you see a view of that amphitheater on the kind of in the middle of the slide, and then on the left side of the slide, the two levels of the Environmental Education Center and the outdoor classroom that's below it, that's in this kind of triangular void. And what we're showing here is that there's a series of paths that connect both from, as I mentioned, Good Hope Road, but also from Anacostia Drive and the Anacostia Riverwalk. Next. So there'll be a connection through the stair you see here on the left side, directly across to the Kayak Launch. So the Kayak Launch and the EEC, or the Environmental Education Center, will of course work in conjunction together. And then there are also paths that can lead you up to the amphitheater, which also helps us bring services up into the amphitheater, and also direct connection from the amphitheater over to the outdoor classroom and the Environmental Education Center, which is the red line you see. Next. So here you're standing really in the kayak launch. You've just gotten out of a kayak and you're looking back at the Environmental Education Center, welcomed into that outdoor classroom by a series of steps that face downriver and other seating areas that are under the bridge, creating a shaded spot for kids to sit and be kind of introduced to the whole experience of being at the EEC. Next. And here you're looking at a view, looking down at the two levels of the Environmental Education Center and the outdoor classroom, with the bridge actually removed, just so you can kind of see more clearly. But you can see where the bridge would be outlined here with the dotted line. The outdoor classroom is a space that is a kind of almost a space where you'll be able to look down on from the bridge above, but also where children can be brought outside in order to be introduced to the whole Anacostia Watershed before they're taken into classrooms that are in the building itself. Next. Here you're standing on the Anacostia Lookout, looking down over the two levels of the Environmental Education Center on the left side, and then back also to the amphitheater space, and then also, of course, beyond to Anacostia. Next. Below this Anacostia Lookout, as I mentioned, is the Community Porch. So this is an area that sits between the play space and the cafe in a shaded space that's flexible and can be used in different ways all throughout the year. So here we're showing a kind of book and arts and crafts fair, but can be used for performances or just casual sitting out, and also as an extension of the cafe. Next. And here you're sitting within the cafe itself, looking back out to the east. So as I mentioned, there'll be a kind of ample kitchen area. We're hoping to have really affordable food options and a great place to come and get food while you're on the bridge park. And there'll also be a separate space just behind you here that's a dedicated community space. Next. So just beyond the cafe is the central plaza, which again is the central main gathering space on the bridge. And then on either side of the upper areas of the bridge are the two lookouts. So on the east, the Anacostia Lookout, and on the west, the Navy Yard or Capitol Lookout. Next. So here, again, this image I showed just a second ago on the Anacostia Lookout, looking back out to the east. Next. Then here, a view from within the central plaza. This is a place that will be a flexible area on the bridge where all kinds of different events can take place. And then the two paths on either side of it lead up to the Capitol Lookout, providing a place to look out over DC, but also to look down on all the everything that's happening in the bridge park itself. Next. So here you see, of course, the form of the bridge itself creates these places where you can be not just on one level, but on two levels, and get a real lookout over the river and the city beyond. Next. And then this here, looking down on the Anacostia, or on the Capitol Lookout, and then below it, the picnic area and the Hammock Grove. And you can see here, of course, the Navy Yard wall. And with that, I'll hand it over to Hallie to take you on the back across the bridge.
Thank you, Jason. Good evening, everyone. I'm Hallie Boyce, partner with Olin Landscape Architects in Philadelphia. It's a pleasure to be here again to give you the latest update. I think you can see from this bird's eye view from historic Anacostia, that's Good Hope Road in the foreground image, looking towards the Navy Yard, which is on your left, that this is a richly layered landscape, much more richly layered than what is there today in Anacostia Park, which is predominantly lawn at the moment. So we've worked to layer in both woodland up against the highway of Route 295, meadow as you step down the hillside, and then wetland plantings along the river's edge. These would be primarily native species with some adapted plantings, depending on the microclimate that is created here. This is a multifunctional landscape that serves many different purposes. It will first and foremost demonstrate best practices with regards to capturing, cleansing, and reusing stormwater for irrigation, but also demonstrating how plantings like those shown can improve and address river water quality. It will be seasonally interesting throughout the year. There will be a series of blooms in both the meadow and wetland plantings, as well as on the bridge. And I'll show you some images of that in a moment. And we were thinking that, like the Cherry Blossom Festival in the spring, that the Bridge Park might have a fall festival in the fall season. And that's why I'm showing you the fall season in this image. We think it could be quite beautiful, quite colorful, and attract people from all over the country. And then finally, the tree plantings that we've been working with OMA and WRA and our own team to achieve are so important, given the need for critical shade here, particularly in the summer months, to make this an open and welcoming place throughout the seasons. Next, please. So as Jason noted, we've created a series of experiences, of landscape experiences across the bridge, beginning, I'll start on the Navy Yard side with the Navy Yard Garden, and then there's the Hammock and Picnic Grove, a place to relax and refresh. If one moves up that sloped path towards the Anacostia Lookout, there's the Great Lawn. And then if you drop down to the cafe and porch area, the Muscle Power Play is adjacent to the porch. And then one has the opportunity to explore both urban agriculture as well as the woodland and meadow plantings that really encircle and surround that very strong landform of the outdoor amphitheater or green amphitheater. Next, please. So I'm going to take you on a walk from the Navy Yard side back to historic Anacostia. I'm at the gateway to the Navy Yard. You can see that wall on the right. And so one has this opportunity of taking this gently sloping and accessible path down to the river's edge and connecting to the Capitol Riverwalk trail that leads to Yards Park and other places in the Capitol Riverfront. As Jason noted, there's this mid-path connection. You see the gentleman moving up through the plantings to the bridge deck proper. And if we go to the next image, please. Here I'm on the bridge walking directly up towards Anacostia Plaza, the central plaza, with beautiful, colorful ground cover or rich texture, if you will, on the ground with the critical shade and canopy trees above, really framing that view to the structure and the plaza beyond. Next, please. Here we're in the Hammock Grove, and you can see it has wonderful views. This is looking back towards Poplar Point, which I'm sure many people are familiar with. The opportunity, again, as I said, to take it easy and take a nap on the bridge park in one of those hammocks. Next, please. Or if you're the more active types, the opportunity to do group events such as yoga on the lawn or opportunity to picnic and refresh while taking in the tremendous views. That's Poplar Point on the left, the new Frederick Douglass Memorial Bridge in the middle, and then Yards Park and the Capitol Riverfront on your right. Next, please. And here we are, we're moving further east. That's the porch and cafe beyond on your right that Jason described. And the intention for the play area, you know, the Anacostia Watershed Society will be running the Environmental Education Center, and they have a tremendous muscle power program where they have deployed over about 40,000 mussels in the river, which are cleansing it on a daily basis. And so we thought it would be wonderful to have a very physically engaging play area that would also dovetail with the educational programming that the society is putting forth for school groups and just the general public. So with this theme, we thought we could incorporate these muscle elements that children could climb in, giving children the opportunities to take slides and create elements that they could run through as well. So the opportunity for parents to sit on the porch and watch their children enjoy the play area was very much in mind. Next, please. And as Jason was noting, we really worked, the Olin team worked to craft this landform that creates these accessible paths that swirl around and land in this great outdoor room, this green amphitheater, as I said, with these wooden steps that would step down to the lawn area. I think it'll be a wonderful community place throughout the year, a place for daily use informally, but also the structured events that Jason was showing, and really with tremendous views. If we go to the next slide, please. Throughout the seasons, this is just a summer view. You can see the opportunity to look down on the river again and you know, meet a friend for lunch or just take in the view as you wish. And next, please. And likewise, in other seasons, even in winter, the opportunity to build snow, you know, snowmen and make snow angels here was very much in mind. A variety of uses, but key to being a gathering place for the community that's open and welcoming. And with that, I will turn it over to Vaughn.
Thanks, Hallie. Again, I'm Vaughn Perry, the Director of Equity at the 11th Street Bridge Park. And while all of those renderings of the park were amazing, and I'm sure got a lot of you excited, as a long-term Ward 8 resident, what really gets me excited are some of the investments that we have been able to secure for the community that is directly surrounding the park. And oftentimes, one of the questions that we have to ask ourselves every day is who are we serving? And for us, the answer is always the community and the residents. And so, that is the way that we look at the work that we're doing. And so this first slide right here really just is indicative of that. What we believe is what gets measured gets done. And so we worked early on with the Urban Institute to just really pull some baseline data to kind of see, what the demographics were in the community, things like the child poverty rate, unemployment, the median value home difference. And I think one of the markers that really has always stood out to me is there's about a $450,000 difference in the median value of owner occupied homes between east of the river and west of the river. And so it just kind of shows the disparity, that we have between the two rivers. Next slide, please. And so, as Scott mentioned earlier, with the building of the park and really engaging with community residents and including them in the design oversight committee, one of the things that we believe is the answers are always in the community. And so what we did was really engage with residents to help us to figure out ways that really we could pour resources directly into the community. This is outside of the bricks and mortar, but oftentimes, when we heard folks, they would say, yes, this is great. And what are some things that we can do, right now in the community? And so, our goal is always to give the decision-making power back in the community. And so what we did was hold a series of town hall sessions to really, just talk to the community about what kind of strategies we could come up with. And the manifestation of that is what's called our Equitable Development Plan. There's 34 plus strategies that break down between housing, workforce, small business, and cultural equity. Next slide, please. I'll just highlight a few of the strategies in each of the categories. Just to let you know, some of the numbers that you'll hear me share will be a little bit more than what you see visually. We are still updating our infographics. And so early on with our housing strategies, we focus on tenants' rights workshops and organizing tenants. And so we work closely with our partner Housing Counseling Service to organize those meetings. We also have been hosting and facilitating Ward 8 homebuyers clubs. MANA has been coordinating those. We have, to date, we have about 96 people who have been able to purchase Ward 8 homes. And we've had over 800 people to actually go through the training. But one of the strategies that really resonated out of the housing strategies was standing up a community land trust in the community. And for those that aren't familiar with community land trust, it's really about establishing a permanent affordability. And when we talk about affordability for the residents who actually live in the community. And so we work closely with City First to stand up the Douglas Community Land Trust. Since the time of us supporting them getting stood up, they have created their own, they are now their own 501c3. And they have over 220 units as a part of their portfolio. And we're recently just announced a $2 million budget within the city budget. So, really looking forward to some amazing things in the housing category. Next slide, please. With the small business, we've worked again with one of our amazing partners, the Washington Area Community Investment Fund, or WACF, where we partner with them so that they could provide both technical assistance and loans to a number of the East of the River businesses. We've also been working really closely with the Anacostia Bid and Improvement District. Over the last year, especially with the pandemic hitting, we had to pivot somewhat in looking, and stores had to pivot. And so what we've been doing is running a pilot program to support these businesses through web support and looking at different ways to bring in new revenue into those businesses. Next slide. From the very beginning, workforce has really been important to us. We our goal is to have as many people from the community to actually be working and helping to build the bridge. And so we've already hosted or facilitated with the help of our partner Skyland Workforce Center, 20 trainings. We've had over 212 people to actually come through the training. And we've had 81 of those people be placed in jobs. And so again, it's really important for us not just to put people in a training, but how are we making sure that they are being gainfully employed right now? And then we can track them, track the experience that they're getting, the skills that they have, so that when the bridge is being able to get built, we can give the general contractor a database of people that have been trained and have skills that can qualify for a number of those jobs. Next slide, please. And then finally, our arts and culture strategies have been also extremely important. We really want to look at how do we elevate the arts and culture to the same level as the economic impact. And so one of those things, we have done is at our Anacostia River Festival every year, we've celebrated our Anacostia River Festival where we have 8,000 to 10,000 people show up. But we always have an artist market there. And those artists have generated over $7,000 of income. We have also been training what we call we've been training local residents through our community leadership empowerment workshop. And really what that's about is amplifying the voice and the power of the community so that they can become system disruptors within their own respective communities. And we also have our Taste of the Harvest. Scott mentioned earlier how east of the river, Ward 8 specifically, is a food desert. And so we work closely with faith-based organizations to help build Bridge Park plots. And so every year we have this big Taste of the Harvest Festival. You all are invited to come spend some time with us this Saturday at 6 o'clock at the Arc, 1901 Mississippi Avenue, so that you can, and it's going to be a drive-in, very COVID safe, but come on out and celebrate with us. And another save the date, the Anacostia River Festivals next year is going to be on April the 10th. We invite you to, hopefully we'll be out, back out in the park. And so looking forward to celebrating with you all. Next slide, please. And then we have Thrive. And I mentioned earlier about having to respond to the pandemic. Thrive is one example of how we've had to shift our resources. This is a collaboration that I'm super proud of. It's the largest unconditional cash transfer program ever attempted in the United States. And with our amazing partners, Bread for the City, Far Southeast Strengthening Collaborative, and Martha's Table, we were able to raise over $3 million and to support 564 Ward 8 families. And ultimately what they received is $5,500 in financial assistance to really to allow for them to not only survive the pandemic, but to thrive through it. And so to date, we have secured over $70 million in our equitable development strategies, which is almost as much as it will cost to build the park. And so, I believe it's a testament to how deeply we are committed to really pouring resources into the community. Thanks again. And now I'm going to hand it off to Ariel from AWS.
Great, thank you, Vaughn. Thrilled to be here tonight. Again, my name is Ariel Tron. I'm the Director of River Restoration Programs at the Anacostia Watershed Society, and we are excited to be partnering with the 11th Street Bridge Park to operate the Environmental Education Center. Just a little bit of background for those of you who aren't familiar with us. Anacostia Watershed Society was formed in 1989 with the goal to protect and restore the Anacostia River. So over the past 30 plus years, we've worked on lots of different projects and programs to improve the water quality, restore the natural systems along the river, and really rebuild the relationship between the people in the river through our education and recreation programs. So that's what I want to talk about tonight is education and recreation. So We will have an opportunity for everyone to provide feedback on the type of programming they would like to see at the Environmental Education Center, because as Scott mentioned, this project really since its inception has been informed by the community. So we want the design and the programming to really be informed by what people would like to see. So if we can just go to the next slide, I want to start by talking a little bit about our current environmental education programming, and then we will have opportunity for people to provide their ideas and feedback as well. So one of our main environmental education programming pillars is our school-based program. So we work with about 50 schools every year, so around 4,000 students who participate in our 3-part environmental education program. So we go into the classroom and do an introductory lesson with the students, or right now we do it on Zoom. And then for their second experience, they come out for a field experience on the river, which includes a boat tour of the river. So right now we operate those boat tours from a variety of locations along the river, but are thrilled to be able to offer them from the Bridge Park once it's open. And then the third component of all of our school-based programs is an action project. So the students aren't just learning about the river, but they're also taking action to help to protect and restore the river. So those action projects look different for each school. Some students participate in our Rice Rangers program, where they're raising wild rice, wetland plants in their classrooms, and then bringing them out and transplanting them along the river. Some students take part in tree planting. Some students do art projects. You can see in the bottom photo there where we have some students who do murals on storm drains. We're working with Anacostia High School right now to do 3 storm drain murals that will be installed later this month in front of the school. So all different types of action projects. And again, we operate these programs right now, but once we have the Environmental Education Center, that will really be a hub. So when the students come out for their field experiences, that will be where they will be able to come as a jumping off point for the boat tour and the action projects as well. So if we can go to the next slide. Some of our other education programs include some longer term programs where we're working with students and adults, often in evenings and weekends. So we have a program called the Saturday Environmental Academy, working with middle school students. We offer that program in the fall and in the spring, and has a theme for each semester, and the students come out each Saturday and do different field experiences and activities throughout the city. So again, we foresee operating this program out of the Environmental Education Center, and this is really an opportunity for students who want to do something a bit more in depth and return again and again. We also do adult education programs that, again, we currently offer, but we anticipate running these out of the Environmental Education Center. So these are programs, again, for people who want to learn more in depth about the river, about the watershed, about the natural world, and want to take action. So we do a program called Watershed Stewards Academy, as well as the Master Naturalist program. If we can go to the next slide. So again, we really are excited to have the Environmental Education Center at the 11th Street Bridge Park, which you can see in the image here, to really be a hub for environmental education, recreation, and interpretation. And so that people can return again and again. Maybe a student comes out on a school field trip, they want to come back with their family on the weekend and show their parents what they learned. They'll be able to go into the exhibit space and teach their parents about the river and about the wildlife. They'll also be able to go out on the dock, which I'll talk about more about in a minute here. So again, this also just helps to show you where the center itself will be on the Ward 8 side of the Bridge Park. We go to the next slide. Just some more images to show you what the Environmental Education Center will look like. So this shows you the entrance, so kind of a big outdoor plaza. So we'll be able to work with, large school groups that come. Oftentimes when we're working with schools, they bring out all of their 4th graders, which could be 3 or 4 classes. So we wanted to have, a big greeting area where everyone can safely get off the bus. We can split into groups and they can go through different stations, some going out on the boat first, some going into the center first, and getting to have a really rich experience experiencing the Bridge Park for that field experience. Next slide will show you an idea of what it looks like on the inside. So this shows you one of the classrooms. So there will be several classrooms inside. So there will be indoor space so that, again, when students come on the field trips, they'll be able to rotate through different stations. these classrooms will also be able to be used for other types of programming, which again, we'll be able to hear your feedback in just a few minutes. Things that we could offer in the evenings and weekends. People wanted to come for different types of workshops on a variety of topics, everything from learning the history of the river to the wildlife, different types of arts workshops. So a lot of flexibility and variety of what can happen on the inside of the center. The next slide again shows you a view. This is looking out from the flexible space, so kind of the larger area. It can be subdivided into smaller areas. So again, when a whole large class is there, we can have everyone together inside if we have inclement weather, or if we want to split that space up into smaller areas to have the children work in smaller groups. There'll be the ability to do that as well. Next slide, please. Another really exciting component of our role at the Bridge Park will be focused on boating. So this is something that is a core part of our programming currently and always has been, is getting people out on the river, getting people out on our skiff, out on our pontoon boats to do an educational tour of the river. We also have canoes and kayaks so that we can lead guided tours of the river. And as Vaughn mentioned, as part of the Anacostia River Festival that happens every year where thousands of people come down to the park, the future site of the park, and we've been testing out different programming ideas. We've been doing canoe trips and boat trips, getting people out on the river. So we foresee continuing to offer that once the Bridge Park is open as well, that we'll have guided canoe tours, guided kayak tours, where people will be able to learn about the river, as well as rentals. So you can see in this picture that we currently have a temporary dock there so that we are able to operate some boat tours from the 11th Street Bridge Park currently. But on the next slide, you can see that as part of the Bridge Park, there will be a much bigger, much better dock than we currently have with our small temporary dock. And so again, as Jason showed in some of his earlier images, this will be just south of the park. And then you can see that there will be kind of 2 access points so that we can easily have school groups that are using the dock, as well as have the canoe and kayak rentals that will be open to the public. So really excited about having that dock and those rentals on the east side of the river. And if we can go to the next slide. So again, just to recap, those are some of the types of programming that we currently offer in terms of environmental education and recreation, those school-based programs and class field trips that we're really excited to be able to offer at the Environmental Education Center, our Saturday Environmental Academy for middle school students looking for more in-depth programming on the weekends, our Watershed Stewards Academy, which is for adults who want to, again, become more involved, learn how they can do an action project in their community. We'll be able to host those classes at the Environmental Education Center. And then the public programming that I mentioned that we plan to offer on evenings and weekends that can be, you know, the world is our oyster there in terms of what we can offer, all kinds of different topics and activities, the things that could include a boat tour and some things inside as well. So look forward to hearing everyone's ideas about that. And then of course the boat rentals and the guided boat tours will be another real cornerstone of the programming that will be offered at the Bridge Park. So we really want to hear from the community about the programming that will happen. So as we are now moving, you know, as the design is being finalized, as we're getting to 100% design, we're really excited to focus on getting folks' input on the programming as well. So we'll have the opportunity to talk about it tonight, but this won't be the only opportunity to talk about it. You also can send an email to Jessica. You can see her email on the slide there with your ideas. And we also will be hosting another meeting in the winter focused specifically on the programming. So that will be another opportunity for us to dig even deeper than we have today, where we're sort of just starting to scratch the surface about what we can do once we have this beautiful park built on the river. So I will leave it there and turn it back over to Jim as we move into our next phase.
Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. As you see here, we do have contacts information to be able to reach out to both BBAR and DDOT from that perspective. And with that, I think Scott's going to lead our Q&A.
Actually, our Equitable Development Manager, Evelyn Mitchell, if you can introduce yourself, Evelyn, has been monitoring the Q&A and is gonna be moderating some of that discussion. Take it away, Evelyn.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Evelyn Mitchell. I'm the Equitable Development Manager at Bridge Park and will be directing your questions this evening. I'm going to be toggling back and forth between questions that were asked in the Q&A portion and those that would rather raise their hand. My colleague Anna Jane is going to make sure that we're answering both toggling back and forth so we get both of those questions answered. Also, if we are not able to answer your questions tonight, please make sure that they're in the Q&A. We will make sure to answer those questions within the next couple of weeks. So we're going to start with questions for Ariel. This is either for Ariel or Vaughn. Will there be any programming for long-term jobs and training and internships and volunteering? So Ariel, Vaughn, or Scott, I believe.
I can jump in first. As I mentioned in my presentation, we certainly already have a workforce component, and we are going to continue to have a workforce component in training as a part of the equitable development strategies. Right now, a lot of those have been focused on construction more specifically. However, as we get closer to the building of the bridge, we're going to look at more hospitality and retail jobs, but we'll look at as the park is built, we'll look at, whatever the needs are of the community to certainly continue to provide training opportunities.
Great, thank you, Vaughn. Ian and Jane, are there any questions from the attendees with their hands raised for Ariel?
I am not seeing any at the moment.
Okay.
Evelyn, I think Ariel wanted to add something to the training component as well.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Vaughn. Yeah, I was just going to add that in terms of internships and volunteering, that's something that we currently do now, and we definitely anticipate that happening at the Environmental Education Center, of that really being a hub for a lot of our volunteer opportunities. Absolutely, we do a lot of mussel restoration work, wetland work. Of course, there's always trash cleanup work to be done along the river, meadow work. So definitely there'll be lots of opportunities for volunteers to get involved, as well as internships.
Okay, thank you so much, Ariel, for that response. Okay, we're going to go ahead. We have a couple more minutes before we get to the general Q&A. Do you have any more questions for Ariel in regards to the programming and her presentation? Okay, if they pop up, then I'll come back to you, Ariel, and get to you. Okay, Vaughn, a couple questions for you. How did you reach Anacostia residents, especially those who aren't actively online?
Yeah, so early on, as Scott mentioned, we had over 200 meetings. Really, just most of those meetings were just showing up at home civic associations, showing up at faith-based organizations, showing up at nonprofit organizations. And so sometimes they were us presenting, sometimes they were just us being a part of those meetings, so that we could start to learn more of what the community needs were, and just listening to them. And so as we've grown in capacity, certainly, we send out emails and we are online, but, it's still very important for us to put out. We understand that there is a digital divide, and we still, as much as possible, try to put out flyers and information. It's gotten a little bit tougher, of course, over the last year and a half, because we can't have as many face-to-face events. However, our doors really have remained open. We still look to share, our different resources and programming as much as possible. And as Scott always says, we have over 75,000 residents in the ward. We haven't talked to all of them yet, but we're working on it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Vaughn. The next question could be either for Scott or Olin and Oma. It's from James. It says, why not demolish the old bridge as part of this project?
So as part of the goals of the project, which was to basically reutilize as much of the infrastructure as possible. It does benefit us to reutilize the existing foundations that are there, not only from a permitting standpoint, but also from a cost and an effectiveness standpoint. When we start getting into obviously the concept of the design, we're working through the entire project from beginning to end. And one of the things from the very beginning was making sure that we're meeting existing navigational clearance permits. By utilizing the existing foundations, we're able to stay within those and just modify existing permits in lieu of getting brand new permits for the project, which is significant time savings and cost savings from that perspective. So there's many advantages to that from that perspective. And that's one of the reasons we embraced that goal from the beginning. And I worked with Hallie and Jason to, for them to understand the engineering aspects as well as us to understand the concept and their vision for the project.
Great, thank you. The next question that we have is from Joe. And I believe this question could go to Olin or Oma, James, or potentially Scott. Are there any plans for noise reduction from the adjacent 11th Street Bridge? Right now, when you walk on the pedestrian lane on the bridge, you can hear very loud traffic noise.
I'll start. So yeah, I think one of the big things that you have to remember is that this bridge park has a different grade than the existing local bridge, as Jason alluded to with regards to accessibility. The reason that you have not accessibility along the entire length is that there are specific points where we meet up with the existing local bridge that we can create those access points and create those accessibility points along the way. With that, you also get the ability of the existing barrier parapet that's along the bridge that helps to reduce noise. And then by moving some of the programming, such as the amphitheater, off of the bridge and putting that in one location, and then looking at ways to use materials. We have landscaping along those entire area, as well as in the cafe porch, we're going to be looking at ways to make sure that we can utilize materials that help to absorb sound in those areas, but also making sure that those sight lines to the traffic are diminished as much as possible. Are you going to still hear traffic noise? Yeah, in some locations you will, because you're going to be either at or above traffic level. But at some locations, like at the Lookout, you're going to be above that. So that noise is going to be below you as opposed to at your ear level at that location.
Did anyone else want to respond to that question before we move on to the next one?
No, I thought that was great. That we're using plantings and some raised planters also as a bit of a buffer, but we don't want to make too much of a barrier because we want breezes to come through and we want to have connections as we were saying. So, but we're using a variety of techniques to kind of mediate it in specific areas.
Great. I think this question goes to the same panelists. It's from Garrett. How do you anticipate people will arrive at Bridge Park? Are there plans to improve pedestrian, bicycle, or transit connections or address traffic safety on adjacent roads? For example, 11th Street and Good Hope Road. There are not many great options for driving here, nor is it practical to rely on people arriving by car.
I think one of the things that the B-Bar has been doing from the very beginning is they've been utilizing the festival to be able to understand how people are getting to the community and getting to that location for the Bridge Park. Understanding that you have a lot that are utilizing Metro and those walkability paths from that area. DDOT is doing studies along 11th Street with regards to different ways to address bikeability to that location, as well as address the pedestrian movements along that location. As you saw through the presentation, we've been utilizing as many different methods between bike, ped, and understanding the traffic movements that will happen from a multimodal look at this entire location. We do understand that we are making provisions for Uber and Lyft type drop-off areas for that area. But Scott and his team have also been working to understand relationships that they might be able to do with different parking areas to be able to provide that parking on high volume and usage time.
Great, thank you, James. We have another question, 1 second. Okay, let's go to Vaughn. In regard to the numbers shown about what's happened in Ward 7 and 8, how do you engage in community outreach? The numbers across Ward 7 and 8 seem low in terms of success rates. What methods are used for engagement? How are you engaging new and existing members of the community? And this is from Amber.
I'm not sure what number she's referring to. Maybe it's the first slide that I showed. And just for clarity, that slide and that data was taken prior to us implementing any of our equitable development strategies. And so this, and I'm trying to make sure I answer all of that question. The second part of that, through community engagement is really, I mean, honestly, everything that we do has a lens of community engagement, whether it's through our programming. And so that could be, the things that I mentioned before, like our Taste of the Harvest and our Anacostia River Festival, or it could be programming like our Community Leadership Empowerment Workshop. It could be through our different artist programming that we do. Some of it is face-to-face. Again, over the last year and a half, we've shifted to a lot of virtual programming. And honestly, I think we've been able to reach even more people through a lot of the virtual programming. But, if anybody's interested in sharing with us, new ideas or ways, or has a community that she would like us to speak to, then we will certainly come out and speak to them. All they have to do, is email any of us. I'm Vaughn at bridgepark.org. She can certainly email me. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Vaughn. This next question is from Anonymous, and this can go to Scott or James or Jason or Hallie. When do you estimate this will be completely finished?
Yeah, I can take a crack at that. We should be at 100% design by the early next year, the first half of next year, and begin the process of soliciting our general contractor. The general contractor, it'll take about 6 months to secure general contractor. So we see ourselves breaking ground early 2020, I'm getting my years right, early 2023. And then we anticipate 18 to 24 months of construction. I'd suggest 24 months to be on the safe side. So opening up in late 2024, realistically, sort of early 2025.
Okay, and then to follow up with that, Esme asked, will portions of the park be closed to the public during construction? I'm assuming Anacostia Park.
Jim, you want to?
So the pathway along Anacostia Drive will be open at all times. We're making sure that that stays open. There may be times where there are detours or there are temporary stoppages of movements when we're lifting steel or doing things from that perspective. It's not safe to be moving through that location, and we'll be making sure that we implement detours at that time. The pathway that's coming down, all of the construction is going to be in the vicinity of that intersection of Good Hope and Anacostia Drive. And so that entire area is going to be used for staging in that quadrant. And so we're going to be utilizing that for the entire duration, but there will always be, the local bridge will always be open, as well as the walkway along the local bridge at that time.
Great, thank you, James. Our next question is from Adam, and I believe this can go to Olin or Oma or James. How long will it take to ride from end to end on a bicycle?
I guess it depends on how fast you pedal.
I think because it's about 1,000 feet long, by bike, it would probably be a 2 to 3 minute ride at most. And likewise, sort of a 5 to 7 minute walk, again, depending how quick one is. That answers the question. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question, and I believe this would probably go to Scott. This is from Joe. Would there one day be plans for the piers of the old Frederick Douglass Bridge to become District's second elevated park, to have a circular park with the 2 bridges and the banks of the river on both sides?
What an awesome idea. We are a little consumed right now with transforming the old 11th Street Bridge into a park. But I do think that, I do think though, especially with the opening up the Frederick Douglass Bridge, which is so striking, we're really going to be bookending the Anacostia River with the Frederick Douglass Bridge and 11th Street Bridge Park, and creating this larger constellation of activities on both sides of the river, connected by bike and ped paths. That is just going to be really phenomenal. So. But we're happy to give any advice on how to turn part of an old bridge into a park.
Great. The next question, more construction questions from Nadia. Will the stairs have small side ramps for bike wheels, strollers, etc.?
Maybe I can take that. I mean, I think that's something we can definitely look into. So I think it's a good question and a good comment, and we'll look into that.
And then another follow-up question, kind of similar from Anonymous. Will this park have a bathroom? Will it be public and free?
Yes, there are bathrooms, publicly accessible bathrooms adjacent to the cafe and also adjacent to the park offices and environmental education center. So really supporting events all across the park and giving people access to that.
Okay, thank you, Jason. See, Anna Jane, are there any attendees with their hands raised?
Not at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, Vaughn, this question is going to you from Christina. With rising cost of housing prices across the city, how much of the funds dedicated towards the equity will go towards housing assistance for DC residents? So lower income residents are not priced out of their community. With the building of the park, it will attract investor and raise housing prices.
Yeah, I can't answer specifically, like in terms of a percentage of, what will go to housing subsidies. I can say that a few years ago, we were awarded a $5 million grant through JP Morgan Chase, and $3 million of that went specifically to the Community Land Trust. And again, with Community Land Trust, those are all about providing permanent affordability into perpetuity. And so, most of our early initiatives were focused on housing strategies. That is where we put a lot of our energy and investment. We will continue to look at ways that we can pour resources into housing. Scott, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I would say that out of the dollars that we've been able to bring to the community through the equitable development and through our realizing our equitable development strategies, and through our amazing partnerships with LISC DC that really helped us form the equitable development plan from the beginning. LISC DC started a program that they call Elevating Equity, which is implementing equitable development strategies in the exact same geographic area. And to date, you can go to lisc.org/elevating equity to see a full list of all of their investments. To date, they had a goal of investing $15 million into the local community. They've exceeded that. They're now up to $67 million that they've invested in the nearby neighborhood. And the majority of that, it's a blend of a whole bunch of different things, but the majority of that is housing through LIHTC deals, through loans and so forth. And I would say the majority, I can't give you the exact number, but the majority of our equitable development plans, the dollars that we're able to raise has gone towards either the Community Land Trust or our partnership with MANA. To date, as Juan mentioned, to date, we've been able to secure between the LISC investment and our investment, $77 million to date, to invest in the equitable development strategies within a couple mile radius of the park.
Great, thank you. We have a next question for, let's see, it could be James or Jason or Haley. This question is from Jim. He said, I love the fact that despite addressing many practical concerns in the passage of time, the basic initial program and social aims of the project have remained intact. My question is, would Olin and OMA and the rest of the Bridge Park team now reprogram the misguided McMillan sand filtration plant development on North Capitol Street into an interactive public park the city deserves? I guess I can go to multiple people.
I guess that would depend on where everyone wanted to take that, but I think that's not where we're focused right now. I think to Scott's point, we're very focused on where we are right now. I think that's something that obviously those concerns can be directed to the various agencies to be addressed from that perspective.
I will say that the equitable development plan that we've developed, the process of engaging with the community to create equitable development strategies to ensure that local residents can stay and thrive in place, they can be replicated. And indeed, if you go to bridgepark.org/equity tools, you can see a number of a 7-step process that we found to engage with local residents to create equitable development strategies. And indeed, we're now advising almost a dozen projects around the country, all pro bono, right? They were paying it forward, but to create their own equitable development strategies in Los Angeles and in San Francisco and in Dallas and Buffalo and Detroit and a bunch of other places. So those strategies certainly can be replicated across the city and across the country.
Great, thank you, Scott. Anna Jane, do we have any hands raised from the attendees?
I think we did. Shiva Moore. If you want to come off mute.
She might not be able to. Jessica, I don't know if someone can put Shiva Moore off of mute.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this question, I guess, could perhaps be for Vaughn or anyone who can answer. Can you share some insight regarding plans for the skate pavilion? And are any roller skaters involved in the decision-making process in terms of the plans for reimagining the park?
Shiva, thank you for that question. That is a great question for our partners at National Park Service. I know we did, I thought we were going to have an NPS, the representative on tonight, but I don't see him. But we'll make sure that we get that to them and make sure that question's answered. I know just a couple of weeks ago, we partnered with the Go-Go Museum to do a really amazing event called Crank and Skate that was at the pavilion and go-go music and panels, and it was like one of the most amazing things that I've experienced. We had several thousand people there. It was awesome. I also know that the new Friends of Anacostia Park is starting to have regular skate nights that are there on Sunday evenings. And Richard Trent, the new executive director. Mike Camiso is on the call. So maybe, Mike, you can unmute yourself so I don't say the wrong thing, and you can go ahead and speak to that question. Mike, can
everybody hear me?
Yes. Hey, Mike.
Oh, great. Nice to see everybody. I'm Mike Camiso. I'm the acting deputy superintendent here over at National Capital Parks East. And I believe there was a question regarding the skating pavilion. So we're currently working parallel to the work that you all are doing on the 11th Street Bridge Park. We're also working on a development concept plan for the portion between 11th Street Bridge Park and what we call Northfield right before the Pennsylvania Avenue Bridge within Anacostia Park. And we're looking at how we are re-envisioning the uses within those spaces in Anacostia Park, looking to improve uses within the park facilities, also looking at the skating pavilion being one of them that we want to improve. And so we're currently right now in the process of completing that DCP. Once we have completed it, we will look at each area that the public has commented on and look for ways to improve those spaces. We anticipate not having to do, we're looking to really improve the skating pavilion as part of that DCP, but we will have to go through funding mechanisms to get that rehabilitated. So still, there is some work to do before that, but right now, again, we're in the planning stage of that project.
Thanks, Mike. And I understand that the skating pavilion is the only skating pavilion in a National Park Service property in the entire United States, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. Need to protect that. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
All right, our next question, Scott, this is going back to you or Vaughn. The mayor recently approved a budget to complete the Shepherd Branch Trail in Ward 8, which would provide a great connection to the park off of Good Hope. However, DDOT must still negotiate with CSX. Is there a way for the park and BBAR to also play a role in advocating for that to increase connection between the park and the Ward 8 community?
We'd love to help however we can. I'm going to put my email address in the chat. It's scott@bridgepark.org because we want to make sure that this park is deeply stitched into the adjacent neighborhoods. We've done, made some pretty significant barriers over the last 70 years to really separate the community from the river, from the park and the future Bridge Park, the 295 freeway and the 695 freeway, particularly. But there's only 3 points of access into the park. I mean, it's just really tough. So, we've installed a bunch of art on either side of the river to use cookie crumbs to get down, but anything we can do to improve that, we would be 300% supportive. So please reach out and we'd love to see how we can help.
All right, great. Thank you, Scott. Here's another question. This could go to anyone, I believe. Any strategy to reduce exposure to air pollution from the freeway nearby on the Bridge Park?
Hey, this is Nick. How's everybody doing tonight? Nick Neese with WRA. I guess I'll take a crack at answering this question, maybe with a promise to follow back around with the questioner. As part of our environmental analysis to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, we did look at, and not getting too technical, we looked at compliance with the Clean Air Act, and this project per se is not really a generating air quality issues, and as the question indicates, it's more about the traffic surrounding the Bridge Park. I think there's a couple answers to this question. Typically, when a new roadway is being constructed or improvements are being made to a roadway, as part of federal and the district DOEE regulations, they look at that and they develop plans and to ensure compliance with the Clean Air Act and conformity analysis. So from a big picture standpoint, I guess to answer the question, no, a plan has not specifically been developed. But maybe from a local level, the district does conduct periodic air quality analysis, also responds to concerns about air quality issues and develops plans to address those issues. So that's probably maybe the short answer. But we can look into that a little bit further. Scott, Jim, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Well, and I would also say,
Good,
just to add, working with Hallie and her team, the types of plantings and everything that we're doing on this, we're putting as many plantings as we can, or as Hallie will work with, to get there. And all of those are helping this project help that area with respect to being able to not just be hard surfaces. And that's going to help that entire area with regards to being able to use the park and make it more enjoyable, not just from the pieces that you feel with regards to the heat and the sun and getting that shade, but also just the other direct things with regards to helping noise and air indirectly with regards to your experience on the park. Sorry, Hallie. Hope I did it justice.
That's fine, Jim. The more trees, the merrier, right? Yes, the trees will be very helpful in filtering the carbon dioxide as much as possible, and are a key strategy in that regard. So we've been working with OMA, WRA, and our team to try to incorporate as many trees as possible on the bridge deck proper itself, particularly along that northern edge, while at the same time balancing the need to achieve structural load requirements and architectural sort of spatial requirements as well, and programming.
Great, thank you. We have another question from Oliver. This is an engineering-based question. Is there precedent for building a park on a bridge, i.e. building standards, loads, etc.? Is this project making new structural standards in partnership with regulatory bodies?
Is there precedent? Yeah, we use obviously the Highline network that Scott's alluded to as he goes through that from that perspective. But each one of these projects is unique and unto themselves. They don't have the same loads. They don't have the same approach. While we're dealing with regulations for bridges and we're dealing with regulations for buildings, what we do as a team is we work to develop the design criteria that's specific to this project. We don't develop criteria that is, universal from that perspective, but we meld the criteria at a national level as well as a local level from the DC group and come up with those that meet the requirements from the more stringent of those requirements that are necessary to get those approvals. We develop that as a design criteria, and then the team then executes that forward as we move through the various feasibility, concept, and final design stages.
Okay, great, thank you. I think we'll take a few more questions. Vaughn, this one is for you, I believe. How will the operator for the cafe be decided? Will any preferences be given to local Ward 8 businesses, existing restaurants, cafes, or those that were previously here in Anacostia area in years past? Will rent be affordable for Ward 8 or minority-owned businesses?
I can maybe tackle that. That's a really great question. We've not begun to look at the restaurant operator. We've really been focusing on the design and the engineering, but we do want to make sure that the park itself continues to reflect the community that we serve. We are going to be bringing on board a restaurant consultant to help us think about in this next phase, to think about what some of those amenities might be and the sort of key elements for the cafe. As part of that, I should mention, we are looking at commissioning a number of public artworks for the project. And you might ask, what does that have to do with sort of food vending? One of those is a mobile small business kiosk that can move sort of around the park. At least that's the concept right now. That could include food vendors that are there. And wouldn't it be great to have those food vendors be based east of the river? So if you have ideas, you've got suggestions, again, my email's in the chat, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Great, thank you, Scott. I'm gonna field two more questions. I think we're gonna go till 8:15. So the next question, I think, Scott, this might go back to you. Will there be hours of operation for this park, legally allowed to be there after hours? And if not, how will this be enforced? Who would be in charge? And what jurisdiction is the park, federal or DC?
Great questions. There's several questions that are in there. So I'll start with the end of the question first. The park will, the physical structure itself will remain to be owned by the district, by the District Department of Transportation. And then we, Building Bridges Across the River, in partnership with the Anacostia Watershed Society, will actually run the park. AWS will run the Environmental Education Center, and we'll have sort of a master lease to run the park itself. We or at the last one of our last public meetings, we asked the public of like, well, should we close the park? Should it be open 24 hours? And half the public felt one way, and the other half of everyone, the attendees at the Anacostia High School, felt the other way. I'd imagine this would have sort of similar hours of other parks, right? Sometime after sunset to sunrise, but there's not going to be gates for the park. There's not going to be big sort of walls that get closed off. Certainly buildings itself will be locked up when they're not being used, like the cafe and the community room and the environmental education center. We're looking to follow the ranger model throughout the day and throughout the evening. So rangers will be there. They will be part of the larger Bridge Park team to offer directions. They offer any assistance, where to go, keep an eye on things. And there will be, we see those rangers, they being sort of out there as well. There will be, as standard for a lot of parks, there will be CCTV cameras. So, cameras sort of keeping an eye on things. We're making sure that there's really clear signs of sight for all of the park, because we want to make sure that everyone feels safe when you're there. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Thanks, Scott. I think we have time for one more question from Susan and Rick. This could go to Scott or Vaughn. If anyone else wants to jump in, please feel free to. Has this project spurred interest in real estate development on the Anacostia side? Any concerns with gentrification?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That's exactly why since 2015, we've been implementing the Equitable Development Plan. So by the time the park opens, we'll have been implementing these equitable development strategies for 7, 8, 9 years. I will say we're in a landlocked and height-locked city, and there's an awful lot of development, like take the Bridge Park out of the equation. There's a number of large development projects that are east of the river. There's over $1 billion of economic development that's coming in the river, like has nothing to do with the Bridge Park. But we're doing everything that we can, working in concert with the city, working in concert with the mayor's really remarkable, mayor and city council's really remarkable investment in affordable housing. I mean, this year alone, $400 million of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is really quite remarkable, to make sure that the same residents who've shaped this park from the beginning can be the ones that benefit from it. So we're at 77 million invested to date. We're actively working on continuing to explore new strategies to support the small businesses east of the river, workforce development, affordable housing. If anybody has any additional ideas or they want to partner with us, please reach out. The Equitable Development Plan is not written in stone. It's always meant to be an organic document, and we continue to seek your ideas in partnership.
All right, thank you, Scott. I think that's it for the Q&A. If we did not get to your question, please come back to the Bridge Park site. If someone can put the link in the chat, your questions will be answered within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, so we're a little over time. Thanks to everybody who participated. A huge thank you to all of our presenters and folks that have been on this journey for quite some time. And most importantly, thanks to the community who helped shape the project from the beginning. If you have any questions, please shoot us an email. Reach out to us. We're at the Arc. You can always sort of reach us. Come to the Taste of the Harvest on Saturday. The entire Bridge Park team will be here, and it's a great way to get to see people in person. And stay tuned for our continued development as we work to bridge DC. So thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. And a huge thank you to our partners at the District Department of Transportation and DC government. I have never built a bridge before, so we can only do this through this amazing partnership with this public-private partnership with the city. So looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.